Welcome, everybody. We're going to be working on the Module 1 assignment in this video. And here is the description of the assignment. It says we have a 16-ounce Monster Energy drink, and it has a nutrition label stating that each can has 2 8-ounce servings. And the label also states that for each 8-ounce serving, the drink has this many calories, this many grams of sugar, and 80 milligrams of caffeine. So we need to write a program that asks the user how many cans of Monster they drank today, and then prints out the total calories, total grams of sugar, total milligrams of caffeine. All right. Sample program run. This is what the screen should look like, basically. And I think this is helpful for at least like developing your output statements and what information we're looking for. So after you run it, it should look like this. Let's say the person orders or drinks 3 cans of Monster, and then a little message saying how many calories total, how many sugar, and how many milligrams of caffeine. As you can tell, they are very calorie rich, sugar rich, caffeine rich beverages, right? So I would not recommend that you have that many in one day, or really, ever, I guess. At least that's my opinion on it. All right. Let's think about how we're going to build this. I'm going to fire up Visual Studio here. Got my little cheat sheets on the other screen to see how I did it last time. And I'm looking for my splash screen here. So I'm going to create a new project. It's going to be a C# console app, and it's in our quick pick list here. So I'm just going to choose it from there. I'm going to name this something appropriate, and I am going to name it, let's see, Mod 1 assignment. And this is just one assignment here, so don't have to confuse it with a different one. I have a spot where I'm wanting to store these, and it's not where Microsoft is trying to put it. So I'm going to put it here. And actually, maybe, yeah, no, I'll leave it here in the root. The solution and the project in the same directory. So I'm just going to go ahead and click next. I'm leaving both of these unchecked. I'm going to go with .NET 8. I know that usually I'll demonstrate .NET 6 because that's what the course is built around, but everything we're doing should work just fine in .NET 8. So here we go. Let Visual Studio build out the project for us and load all the resources. All right, I'm going to remove the stuff here. And a couple little things that I might kind of coach you on as you're doing something like this is when you're given a bunch of information, sometimes it's helpful to know what information you're shooting for without having necessarily to bounce back and forth between one screen and another. But some of the key pieces of information, and actually I'm going to say that all of that, actually, all of that. All right, so I'm going to copy all that, and then I'm going to bring it over to Visual Studio and paste it in, and then I'm going to do a CSS style comment like this to comment out all of that. And I just wanted here as a reference is kind of my point. And I'm doing it basically so that I don't have to bounce back and forth, and I have the information right here. And you know what? It's text. I can also copy paste it into my code and save myself a little bit of time. I'm just kind of giving you some tips here. And looking at the instructions also kind of helps to reinforce this, like, where am I going? What am I doing thing, right? Like, you can't really solve a problem unless you know what the actual problem is, and always keep that in the back of your head as you do this stuff. All right, so I'm going to actually start coding down here, and we need to prompt the user to ask them basically how many drinks they had today. So I'm just going to start with a simple console write statement on that one. So I'm just going to paste it in here, and very simple question. And what kind of answer are we expecting? In this case, we're, nobody's going to say, well, I drink 2.5. Well, you might get that one person that says that, I suppose. but we're anticipating whole number answers. So there's going to be a conversion to an integer. So why don't we just drop that in right here? Then you can see I'm setting up a variable called cans, right? It's going to be an integer. And then right off the bat, I'm grabbing the read line from the console, converting it to an integer, and then dropping it in an integer variable, like all in one statement, right? I like this approach. Very quick, very efficient, very direct. All right. One little piece of information that I thought was kind of important is that each can has 2 8-ounce servings, and I think what most of you guys did when I was looking at solutions is many of you did the conversion and then typed in the value. So for example, you might have said, calories equals 220, right? Because it's 110 calories, and you know how to double it. And some of you don't even have to reach for a calculator for that. You just do it in your head and then just type out the number, right? And I totally get it. People will do that. But from the standpoint of like setting up a variable so that it is dynamic and you can kind of back trace where it's coming from, I might suggest, right, that you get a little bit more verbose and show the conversion, right, if it's appropriate. Okay, flip side to that. Is it better to have a number that's already converted to the right number? Yeah, it is, right? It'll run a little bit faster. But in terms of like referencing, if I was like really persnickety about this, I'd say that you could set this up as a 8-ounce calories and then have a separate one called 16-ounce calories, which is the 8-ounce calories times 2. You feel where I'm going with that? Right. The advantage of using that kind of an approach, though, is if you use the calculations over and over again, and then you want to change your program later, if there's like 20 references to the same variable, it works a whole lot better and more efficiently if you only have to change it in one spot. So you assign it to a variable instead of hard code it. So basically, these are literals, right? The 110 and the 2 are literals. And is it really functionally any different than just typing 220? I'm going to say, no, it's not. Right. But I just want to have that discussion, because if we were, reiterating or reusing all that stuff, it would make it really easy to update the program by just changing values for singular variables. Now, I want to show you how I kind of put these variables in here, right? And notice that I declared all of them are integers. Because they're all integers, I used the comma separated thing. I declared them and populated them with values all in one fell swoop in one statement with one semicolon, but there's a comma in between each one, right? I'm just showing you this technique because more advanced programmers tend to go to like this kind of an approach quickly, where the other approach, of course, would be to just do each one on a separate line like this with its own semicolon, for example, right? But I'm going to go back to what I had here. I just want to show you that either way is fine. It doesn't really matter if you declare them each separately, functionally the same difference. So all the math is done now. Now we just have to take whatever we have calculated and put it back up on the screen. So this is how I did it. And I'll have you note, I did it in one concise statement. I used string interpolation, so I got the little $sign in there. And then I put new line characters in, so I didn't have to do separate console write lines. I just did it all in one fell swoop. Right. And so really, if I remove this comment, how many lines of code is that? It's really like 6 lines of code for the whole program. All right, let's run it and see how it works. If it works, right? Here comes the program run. We'll use the same number as the example. I'll just type in 3. And are those the same values that we saw before? They are, right? So this is working, right? If I was to submit this as work, I would probably maybe arrange my screens, maybe kind of something like this. I would bring up my snipping tool, And of course, it opens on screen number 5 or something. And I would basically grab the code and the program output. And you see how I'm like really focusing down on the parts that actually matter. And I am grabbing them in one screenshot. It might sometimes be convenient to do multiple screenshots to grab it, right? And then the expectation would be just open up a Word doc. Once again, other screen, come in here and copy this, give it a label of some sort, maybe your name or something like that. Maybe, exercise number, and then paste in the screenshot. If you have anything to say about it, like yay, it worked or something like that, that's fine. Or if it's a horrible disaster, you could make it bold and red and highlight it. And then I would notice that you had a hard time with it, in which case you should have reached out anyhow. But this is kind of what I'm expecting. And when you do submit this, please don't zip the document. Submit the document separately, and then your zip file, or the document and the program.cs file. Right. This shows me that it worked, no red underlines, and that it ran correctly. So this is why I like this approach. All right, so that is kind of a combination of completing the Mod 1 assignment and how to turn in homework. So this video will end here. If I can find the stop button, I will hit the stop button.